This project started with a simple idea: build a one of a kind instrument for my daughter, Henley. At 8 years old, the guitar was just too big for her hands, so a ukulele seemed like the perfect fit. I had this vision of us building it together, a special father daughter project, but when it came down to it, the complexity of the build was just a bit much, and the last thing I wanted to do was force it. So we pivoted. Instead of building it together, we decided to make it uniquely hers in a different way. She loves animals, so I offered to customize it for her with our laser engraver. She requested, of all things, a cheetah print, and she wanted it over the entire front of the ukulele. I scanned her signature to put on the back to make it really custom to her, but there was a part of this that's a little bit of a secret. It's a personal touch that I hope will mean something to her down the road. So stick around. You're going to get my woodworker's perspective on the first time ever building a musical instrument of any kind. We're going to build the StewMac ukulele kit. I'm going to take you all the way from the first steps to the final sound check. I'll show you every part of the process from gluing the neck to fitting the tuners, and I'll talk about the custom engravings that made this instrument really special for my daughter. And of course, I'll let you in on the one secret that just was, well, a special secret for her. Let's get to the build. So as you know, every good project starts with a plan, and this StewMac kit gives you everything you need. A super detailed instruction book, the solid mahogany top, the back, the sides, pre-shaped neck, the fretboard, the tuners, literally all the parts and pieces you need to put the ukulele together. I've heard these kits are fantastic for first timers. That's why I went with it. And the instructions, like I said, are super detailed. There's even a video series online if you get stuck, which, as someone new to building ukuleles, I learned I would appreciate. The kit also came with a full-size template, actually two templates, one for the top, as I often call it, or the face, or the soundboard, whatever you call it, and one for the back or the bottom. And my very first step, before touching really anything else, was to create a backup plan, just in case something went wrong. So I used the Shaper Trace to scan the template to an SVG file. That way, if I messed up the mahogany top or the back, I'd have a detailed file I could use to cut a new one, whether it's with the CNC or the laser or whatever I needed to. This also served as a means for me to lay out my cheetah pattern, which you'll see in a minute. You see, I've now got the SVG uploaded into Vectric. I had to cut the template image in half, meaning I had to scan first the top, then the bottom of the front, and then the top and the bottom of the back. This required a little extra work and some education on my part on the best way to join these together in Vectric. You actually see, if you see the little middle hash marks, I made a pencil line on the paper template so I could kind of have a rough idea of where I had to join these halves together. It made it a lot easier. Once I had both the front and the back of the ukulele image or the template all scanned in, nodes edited, looking good, I now had a backup. So if I screwed anything up, knowing I was going to be using the laser engraver, that's very possible, I could either cut out a new front and back on the CNC or on the laser. With that done, I set up a new layer and I stripped all the extra stuff out of it, so I just had an outline image, and now I was ready to import the cheetah print. So I did a little Googling, made sure I had an accurate cheetah print, also used the help of AI to say, hey, ensure this is a legitimate, true cheetah print pattern, because I know my daughter and she's going to call me out being the local animal expert in our household. I got a good cheetah print file, got it uploaded into Vectric, and then I did some editing on the outline of the ukulele so the laser engraving would fit just on top of this template, if you will. And I was going to use this file to send to my laser engraver to engrave the entire top or soundboard portion of the ukulele. So now it's time to get to the build. Our backup plan is in place if we mess anything up from here on out. First step is to transfer the brace plan to the wood. So there's braces that go on the back piece and on the top piece, and these lines from the template get transferred just using a little awl or sharp tool, and then they're going to get glued into place. I wanted to minimize the amount of glue squeeze out I had on all the pieces really during this build. So I went ahead, once I had the lines laid out, I put blue tape along the lines so I knew when I glued these brace pieces on, I could just take the tape off and it would clean up all the glue squeeze out for me. One thing I do want to point out, you're going to notice in this video, if you ever build one of these kits, the directions and the build assist videos that they provide, they include some pretty interesting and unique clamping scenarios, and the way they clamp things, they use rubber bands, they use clothespins, they use all this stuff. I use a little bit more traditional woodworking tools. It worked out fine for me, but if you think this was not a good idea, just let me know in the comments. I'm new to this, so I'm learning every step of the way. In addition to using the clamps, I'm using the CA glue / Titebond gluing trick on these brace pieces. So I use primarily Titebond Quick and Thick to hold these on, but I left a few areas where I put the 2P10 CA glue to ensure this would be held on once I put that brace piece in place. I did not want it moving around, and I want it to dry quickly. Once in place, I give it a quick shot of accelerator, and I know that CA glue is now cured and holding the piece tight to the mahogany back, and the braces will not move. Now the same game continues with the top or soundboard piece. You can see there's a few more components to this, but the same game is played. Transfer the lines, make sure I can see where they go, and then eventually glue the pieces on using clamps, CA glue, and Titebond Quick and Thick. I had to do this in a few stages because my clamps were overlapping, but I got the job done eventually. With all those braces on, this part was complete, and it was time to move on to assembling the body. Now the directions are very clear on how to build this mold, I'm going to call it, where it holds the side pieces, front, back, and on the sides. And it holds them in position so once they're lined up, glued up, you can ensure everything is in the proper position. I didn't go into detail on how to make this. They're very clear in the instructions. At first I thought about not using it and coming up with maybe my own way, maybe making a custom CNC type of thing to hold this, some kind of special jig. But the more I looked at the simplicity of their idea, their design, I decided to go with it, and it was very simple. What you see me doing here is marking the center lines. Before you glue up these side pieces, you want to ensure everything is lined up and centered as much as possible. So you're going to mark a center line on the neck block, and that is what goes on top closest to you here on the screen. And you want that lined up with the center line of the template, so you know everything's lined up once the glue hits it. So there's a couple pieces to identify here. Once you get everything oriented and you know how it's going to be glued up, you've got two blocks. There's the tail block, which I'm holding here. That's the smaller block. And then there's the neck block holding there. That's the larger block. The neck block goes on top. The tail block goes on bottom. Everything's lined up on center. Now there's little chamfers on both of these blocks. Tail block has a chamfer on both sides, on the left and right side, and the back is flat. The back goes against the sides, the chamfers go inside, and then the neck block has one chamfer. It goes away from the sides, you saw me pointing there, and is on the inside. The whole long flat side goes against the side of the ukulele, and the more I say this out loud, it sounds ridiculous. I looked at it 100 times. The instructions are quite clear, but make sure you pay attention to these details. To eliminate any confusion, here is the neck block in place. It's got a right angle here and one chamfer on the inside of the ukulele positioned here. And this is the tail block, two chamfers both on the inside and the flat side against the outer skin of the ukulele. And this part's pretty easy. I use Titebond 3, put glue on all the mating surfaces, the neck block and the tail block, and the joints between the skins, and ensure I got it clamped up properly. Also make sure it's clamped tight to the mold or the jig and square. Now that the sides and blocks are clamped into the mold, it's time to glue the braces to the inside of the top and back. These little carved pieces of wood might not look like much, but I guess they're critical for the instrument's tone and for making sure it doesn't like collapse under the tension of the strings. I don't know, at least that's what I'm told. I did follow their advice on this one. I use clothespins for the clamping pressure. It was really simple to glue these in with Titebond 3. Take your time to trim them up, get them to fit right, and honestly, following their directions is pretty self-explanatory. You line the sides, both the top and the bottom, with the flexible wooden lining, and you're done. With all the linings in place, it was time to take the back and attach it to the sides. This was fairly hassle-free. It required some trimming of the braces that are attached to the back, as well as a few notches in the lining to get it all to work and line up. Now, before I attach this, I did have to work on one of my customized portions of this build, and that was to put an engraved hidden message inside the ukulele for my daughter. So using the Xtool P2 laser, I engraved this message so it would only be visible through the strings when peering into the sound hole. I figure she'll know it's there, but no one will really ever see it. I also remembered she wanted her signature on the back of the ukulele, so I captured that with the shaper trace. I was able to engrave that onto the back of the ukulele as well, and with this complete, I was able to glue on the back. In the instructions, they used a large rubber band for this process. I used a bunch of small weights that I just keep around the shop for this purpose. Once I had piled on enough to sufficiently hold everything down, I let it dry overnight. Now it was time for the customization of the face, or the top, or the soundboard. I'm going to call it the face. So I imported the graphic I'd created earlier, so I was ready to engrave. The Xtool software makes it easy to position graphics directly on the piece inside the machine, but I wanted to make sure this was done before I glued it to the sides, just in case something went wrong. And something did go wrong. In this face piece of mahogany, there was the slightest warp, so I had added a drop of hot glue on both ends to keep it secured to the laser. For those of you who do engraving, you know the last thing you want is for your piece to move in the middle of the engraving process. Well, at some point, one end of my piece came loose and lifted up about a quarter inch, maybe even less. This caused the engraving to be ever so slightly misaligned. I paused the job, brainstormed for a while, and decided the only way to save it was to secure the loose end and start the job over. Luckily, this worked good enough. I would not say it was perfect, but I do believe it'll pass the QA check of an 8-year-old, and with that, the cheetah pattern was complete. I was happy and I could move on. I now had to glue the face to the sides, and I chose to use traditional clamps versus the recommended rubber band clamps or the weighted clamping style that I used for the back. This was essentially the same process as before. Trim the braces and trim the wooden linings or notch the wooden linings until the face fits snugly within the sides. Apply some glue, clamp it, and leave it alone. Next comes what I think was probably my biggest mistake in the project. I had to trim the overhang as the face and the back are slightly oversized for obvious reasons. I had the choice of a flush trim bit in a router or to manually trim them with a chisel, maybe a small plane, and lots of sandpaper. And I chose the router, and although I don't regret it, I should have put a little more thought into the bit choice and how I went about the process. As you can see, I chose a 1/4 inch flush trim bit, but it has a long cutter length. This means the bearing is going to ride in the middle of the ukulele body, a good inch, if not more, from the surface that I'm trimming. I applied painter's tape to the body to prevent the bearing from marring the thin side pieces. I didn't want to mark them up and then have to do a lot of sanding there because they were already sanded once. I decided to go slow and be gentle, try and keep control of the router, but after going only like 2 inches or so along the side, I realized I had a problem. You can see the router bit took off the outer veneer and even the painter's tape along the side. I had either tilted the router slightly or the side may not have been perfectly perpendicular to the surface, or there may have been a slight bulge in that area. Regardless, I had screwed this up. Now, I will admit, I have not always been the most patient person growing up, but as time has gone on, Woodworking certainly has taught me patience. So I sat there calmly, staring at this for quite a bit of time, silently thinking, chewing my gum, contemplating, and I reminded myself that woodworking is much like barbecue, one of my other passions, where a successful outcome relies on how you deal with problems along the way. I gotta show you something. That's fine anywhere.
Where should I put mine?
Anywhere is fine.
I'm just going to put it on the table.
All right. So I just want to show you something, kind of walk through. Well, first I want to see what you think. Let's get this off here because I have wet glue on there.
Ooh, cheetah print.
Check it out. Tell me what you think so far.
You just need to put the cursive on the back.
Oh,
Good.
well, cha.
Wow, I didn't.
What do you think of that?
Good. I thought it was going to be like big down
Nah,
here.
I thought about how big to make it, but I thought maybe small would be good.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like just like when you sign a paper. But you like the cheetah print?
Yeah.
I think it looks good. There's no finish on it. So here's the situation.
What?
If you remember how when I built it, there's the sides and then the back and front or bottom and top are like smashed on top of each other.
Yeah.
And then what I do is I take this thing and I go around the sides and it cuts the top. But here's the dealio.
A problem?
A problem arose. Look, see how it went through the fancy wood into the wood underneath?
Oh, yeah.
And then it did a little bit here, and then there's a little bit here.
At this point, you should just make the whole thing bad.
Well, that's one solution, but I don't think that's the best solution.
Because it wouldn't match the back anyways.
It wouldn't match the back or the sides. Here's what I was thinking. Because I'm going to put finish on this and make it kind of like nice and shiny, you know, like a finished piece of furniture.
Like the table.
Since this is really light, where I messed up and went through the veneer, I can't really stain it or anything because this is just going to be clear because it's going to be pretty wood. But I was thinking this bottom little part here, since we have all the black cheetah print on top, I could paint just like a thin black shiny line all the way around it. So just a thin trace line. What do you think of that? Would that look good?
Or you could do that on like the top and bottom because I feel like that would look like cooler instead of just the bottom.
So make them even, like
Yeah.
like a 1/2 inch on the bottom and a 1/2 inch on top, and then raw wood in the middle.
Yeah.
You think black would be good? I think black would be good because this is going to look really dark once we put finish on it.
Yeah.
So
Wait, I want to feel the texture. It's not that, there isn't that much texture, but there
No.
definitely,
just a little bit.
there definitely is like a bit of like,
It is. It's interesting. I don't know if it's the best plan to be engraving on the top of a ukulele. There's a lot I don't know. What's the name of someone that makes ukuleles? Isn't there a name for that?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yes. I don't know what the name is.
Let's find out. A Luthier.
Luther.
Luthier. How do you think you say
Martin
that?
Luther King. Luther.
Luthier. Luthier. I don't know. Person that makes ukuleles.
Luther.
I'm clearly not a pro, but
yeah, because like a pro would probably not do that.
Thanks, babe. But you know what? It's all about how you fix it, right? So you think that'll be good? So you want a line on top and bottom, black.
Yeah.
Shiny.
Yeah.
That's a good idea, making it even. I knew it was smart for me to bring you out here. Thank you. Do you want to do the rest?
Now. No.
Do you want to build the rest of this?
No.
Look. Here's the parts where your strings will go. All right, babe, you're going to get a line on the top and bottom. It's a good idea.
Not like a line for the top here. How about it goes up to where this ends, but then on the bottom just this, but then on the top just a thin line, but on the bottom where it ends this.
A little thicker?
Yeah, like until it covers up all of this.
Okay.
But then for this one, just like a thin line.
Okay. With the design change approved by my most important client, it was time to move on. Now these kits come with the fretboard already prepared with the grooves, so all I had to do was cut the frets from a long roll of fret wire, I guess you'd call it. And again, the instructions make it very clear what needs to be done. The blue tape you see on my bench is actually attached with the sticky side up, so I could maintain the order of each fret as I cut it. The process was pretty simple. Line it up on the fretboard, cut it, stick it, repeat. So according to the instructions, once you have all of the frets cut, you appropriately position them into each slot and tap them in with a hammer. When they bottom out and they look like they're seated evenly, you then run a little bit of thin CA glue down the side so that it'll kind of channel underneath each fret and secure it that way. I started this process out with this kind of miniature hammer, afraid that I was going to possibly damage or bend these, but they seem pretty tough. So I tapped it a few times, kind of unsuccessfully, and then switched to a bigger hammer and kind of went to town on them, and they seated fine. Didn't appear as though I was damaging them. Hopefully they weren't. Anyway, I never noticed I was, and everything went quite well once I used this bigger hammer. Just before I wicked the CA glue down the sides to hold these frets permanently in place, I waxed the fretboard to prevent the glue from soaking into the wood or getting onto the wood where I did not want it. This seemed to work out quite well. Then I just added a little dab of glue. As you can see, there's no such thing as a dab of glue with thin CA, but I did my best to control it. And it seemed to work out fine. I was quite happy. As you can see, they're a little long. I wanted to make sure they weren't too short, but the next step is to simply file or sand them away. I used this 90-degree block of ash that I had, just as scrap wood, and slowly but surely ground away the end of the frets. The instructions told me to put a slight bevel at the end of the frets. They claim it makes it more comfortable to play, which makes perfect sense. And the way I did this is just put a couple pieces of painter's tape on top of my sanding guide block, and that added just a little bit of a bevel. Seemed to work out quite well. To make sure my fingers weren't tricking me, I used my little miniature woodpecker square, ran along the sides. It was not catching on anything. And that took me to the next part that had me very nervous. attaching the neck to the body. So for this part, the angle has to be perfect because it helps the ukulele play in tune, so they say. So the StewMac kit does make it pretty easy. There's a dowel joint, definitely helps with alignment. After checking my measurements about a dozen times and doing a few dry fits, it was time to commit. The holes are pre-drilled on the neck, so that made it pretty easy. I just had to drill matching holes in the body. But before attaching the neck, the fretboard is permanently glued onto the neck. So here I use Titebond 3, but it was a slippery little sucker, so I tried the good old salt trick where you sprinkle a little salt onto the glue surfaces and the pieces don't slide as much. This worked, but because we don't have normal table salt in our house, I used a more chunky sea salt like a moron, and then ended up having to smash it into fine pieces before everything would seat properly. But hey, it did work. I think it's the first time I've ever used this trick for some reason. But anyway, it worked. So earlier I said I was a little anxious and nervous about attaching the neck to the body, and I thought I was at that step, and then I realized there were several pages of instructions before that actually occurs. So here you see me smoothing the fretboard and neck transition with a file or a rasp. That was nice and smooth to the touch. Then I had to move on to leveling the frets with sandpaper. You literally sand down the metal frets so they are level and even. I wasn't quite sure how this was going to work, but it was actually very simple. And then you round the fret ends so it's a little smoother feel to the touch for your little fingertips. This is also rounding the fret tops. I think I said ends earlier. Ends, tops, everything really gets smooth. You want everything you are touching with your fingers to be super smooth. I didn't show it on camera, but I gave the entire neck fretboard assembly a good sanding. Made sure it was smooth to the touch, pretty much ready to finish except for a final touch-up sanding. And then the moment did come that it was time to attach the neck to the body. Well, almost. What you see me doing here is temporarily attaching the neck and body assembly because I first have to ensure everything is centered and going to line up properly. Not only does the neck fretboard assembly have to be centered and squared off just perfectly, but it also has to line up properly with the bridge. And you're going to see here in a second what that is and the painstaking process and time I spent getting that lined up. Lining up the neck assembly with the body of the ukulele, I spent a lot of time doing this. I measured this every single way possible. It's kind of funny. It reminded me while I was doing it of building radio control airplanes as a kid. Lining up the tail assemblies square to the fuselage and making sure the wing went on square was always quite a process. And this reminded me of that because I wanted it perfectly centered and aligned. And it was driving me crazy, I'm not going to lie, but I got it. And it was worth the extra effort to make sure it was darn near perfect. Okay, so now, for real, I promise, it's actually time to attach the neck to the body of the ukulele. So I did a dry fit. I taped everything off so I knew exactly how to align it. I also had some centering marks. Oh, look, you can see my kid's cheetah pants over there. She was monitoring the process, I guess, at this point. Once I was satisfied with the fit, I decided I would try... Oh, there's my helper. Thank you, Henley. I decided I'm going to do what they do in all their videos and instructions and try these rubber bands because there isn't really a great way to clamp this onto the body. Keep in mind there's no glue on there now. This is just all dry fit, which I would highly recommend. I tried this many ways. I was worried about crushing the sides of the face and the back pieces. It didn't seem to happen, but at the same time, this just, I don't know, I tried 3 or 4 different ways and this was just not working for me. So I finally gave up. Enough with the rubber bands. Good idea, but kind of hard for me to execute. Sure, it's easier for other people. Moving on to plan B, I set up my MFT dog hole clamps. Found a small piece of cardboard that would fit around the bottom of the neck so I would not be damaging it once I pressed it in. I did a dry fit with this. I just needed a little bit of pressure. I did not need much, but it was enough to seal it all up. So I was pretty happy with this, feeling brave, decided let's go for the glue. Got to do it sometime. I first pre-glued the 2 dowels into the neck. And with a healthy amount of Type Bond 3 onto the remaining portion of the ukulele, I just went for it. You'll see I rigged a way to get a clamp for some downward pressure. And then I've got the lateral pressure on the MFT table. And once I got it all set up, there was a little bit of squeeze out because it was taped off. I wasn't too worried about it. I just snugged everything up till I saw a squeeze out, triple checked the alignment, and called it good for the night. I did some cleanup sanding, gave a final sand to the rest of the ukulele, and then believe it or not, I was preparing for some finish. Now I'm gonna have to explain this process a little bit. First off, you mark off the fretboard to keep all finish off of there. That's going to get a wax or oil later on, but it does not get the final film finish. So I got that all taped off using my frog tape. So I did quite a bit of research regarding the finish. And at this point, I still wasn't sure what I was going to do. I thought I might be doing lacquer. But I knew I also had to paint the trim parts where I had made the router mistake and cut through the veneer. So I decided to do some base coats of shellac. The piece of blue tape there is where the bridge is going to go. Fretboard's taped off and everything else is getting a coat of shellac. The reason I wanted to do a base coat of shellac is because obviously, as you know, almost all finishes can go on top of shellac. But I also wanted to seal it off because I knew I was going to be painting the black trim around the whole body of the ukulele. I thought with a base coat of shellac, followed by some masking tape, I think I used vinyl tape, I'll show you that in a minute, that would give me the least likelihood that I would get much bleeding through the masking. I did not want a bunch of black paint soaking into the fibers of the wood, is the bottom line. So I'll speed this up as much as I can, but I want to explain to you what I'm doing with this masking process. I've got quite a bit of area to mask off. I'm using this flexible 1/4-inch vinyl tape because it's very easy to maneuver around curves and bends and it sticks quite well to this shellac. So I took my time putting it on. I couldn't find a good way to measure from the top or bottom. So I know it's a little wasteful, but this is 1/4-inch tape. I used it to get even spacing from the bottom to that very top tape line that you see there. And then I just removed those bottom 3 pieces. This is the best way that visually I could get an even line all the way around the ukulele. It did work well, like I said, a little wasteful, but sometimes you just do what you gotta do. You'll see I did that on the top as well. As you recall, Henley said let's do a thick line on the bottom and then a thin line on the top. So I eyeballed some even spacing there. And then I removed the extra tape that I did not need. And you're starting to see the area where I'm going to mask off for paint. So I'm about to use frog tape to mask off the primary parts of the ukulele, but I decided around the edges of the top and bottom I would continue to use this vinyl tape. I did this because it's so flexible I could bend it and form it around all the curves without having to trim anything with a knife or a razor blade. This took a while, but I think it was definitely worth it. And then you're going to see me just basically cover the entire ukulele with frog tape. This also took a while. I had to be careful not to remove this blue piece of painter's tape that marks exactly where my bridge goes. But because there's finish on there, that outline would kind of show regardless. So here's my outline. Here's everywhere I'm going to get black paint. Now I will cruise through the frog tape portion and we'll get to the painting. So real quick, I decided to do something I do often, like with Aura Mask or things like that, where I will spray one final coat of shellac over the masking so it really seals between the wood surface and the masking. I actually regretted doing this because as the shellac dried, it tightened up that vinyl tape just a little bit. And I think in a minute here where you see I got some of the bleed from the black paint, I think it's because I tightened up that vinyl and it lifted off in some of those tight curves. So no worries, it was easy to fix. Now you see me painting with the gloss black. I think I put 3 coats of it on in total. This right here is where I noticed that's starting to lift up. So with nothing else to do, I just decided I'd push it down and quick hit it with the paint and hope for the best. Overall, the painting was a success. I think it was a great way to hide the mistake with the trim router. And now it's time for the great reveal, where I find out if I totally screwed up that cheetah pattern or if the masking more or less worked. With the exception of those few areas where the vinyl tape lifted in the tight curves, which I already knew was going to happen, the masking was a complete success, no other issues. My primary concern was where I'd already done laser engraving because I couldn't really sand that or fix it. And speaking of the paint bleeding under the masking, this is where I'm about to touch up the areas where it did go under that vinyl tape. And this is the reason I put a base coat of shellac on there in the first place. Even though there's black paint where I don't want it, it's very easy to sand off because it's not soaked into the wood. All I have to do is sand just enough to remove that black paint, maybe 1 or 2 of the layers of shellac, hopefully not go all the way through, but it would come off very easy. At this point, I wiped the entire ukulele down with just a 3M white pad, just to make sure the transitions and everything were smooth. There were no nubs sticking out. And it was time to get shellac on the remainder of the ukulele. I still wasn't 100% sure what final top coat I was going to use. I decided I would make everything look even by giving the entire ukulele at least a couple coats of shellac, and I would go from there. One of my options was to just stick with shellac, but I wasn't 100% sure that was going to be durable enough, and I honestly just didn't know what I was going to do at this point. With the shellac dry, the time had finally come to permanently attach the bridge, and this was a little nerve-wracking. Again, had to be squared, centered, perfectly placed, but I already done most of that legwork, so I just had to double check myself and prepare to do the final glue up. For gluing, I did the CA and tight bond trick. That way I didn't have to worry about clamping it. I wasn't quite sure how I could get some good clamping pressure on this, so I wanted the confidence that once I put it in place, the CA glue would probably hold it. It's important to get the orientation of the bridge proper, so as you see here, the holes where you tie the strings off go toward the bottom of the ukulele, and those ridges go toward the fretboard. All right, now we're at the point where this is really getting exciting. This thing is almost done. It's almost a usable instrument. There's a few steps left. All that's left for the woodworking is to put on a little oil and wax and make sure everything's finished properly. I did decide at this point, I think I'm just going to stick with the shellac. I like the finish. It looks good. It feels good. I gotta be honest, this thing is not gonna get overused, I don't think, by my daughter by any means. So I'm going shellac for now. If I need to change that later, I will. So one of the final steps is to install these tuners. They're very self-explanatory. The holes were already pre-drilled for them. They go into the holes at the top of the neck with a washer and a tightening nut. Once you get them all squared and properly positioned, each one does have a small screw that will hold it in and keep it from pivoting or moving at all once it's under the tension of the strings. I had previously cleaned the wax off of the fretboard that I put on there to keep the CA glue off of there, but it needed a little bit more cleanup, so I did it with some sandpaper, and that was in preparation for these last few steps. This piece here is a little wooden piece. I think it's called the saddle. The strings are going to stretch across that and get tied in there, and this little piece on the top of the fretboard is called the nut. I don't know why it's called the nut, but that's what it's called. This is me just making sure there's going to be proper spacing of the strings above the fretboard. I came up with a couple different ways to measure that, but I followed their directions and it seemed to work quite well. They took a little bit of sanding to get them to fit properly, but it was nothing too intense. So before adding the strings, you're supposed to oil the fretboard. I think there is something called fretboard oil. I went with walrus oil. I figure they can't be that different, but maybe they are. Regardless, this is how this ukulele is getting finished. The remaining wooden surfaces get a coat of this, and then it's time for the strings and a quick tune. So I already confessed this is the first ukulele I have ever built. Therefore, I am not going to try and instruct you on how to attach these strings. The instructions are pretty clear, their videos are clear. There's a certain magical ukulele string knot that you tie. You see me tying it here. I followed their directions, it seemed to work great. You're also supposed to overlap the ends of these strings and tuck them into each other in a certain way. I think I did it. I did the best I could.
Come check it out. You
Down
have
there is a little bit
the
of a mess.
official. We haven't trimmed these yet because we're still tuning.
I didn't know there was only 4 strings on my ukulele.
Yeah, that's part of what makes it easier to play. Go ahead and pick it up, see how it feels.
So, it's heavier than I thought it was gonna be.
But it's not as heavy as a guitar though, right?
No, the guitar can barely. Oh, wait, it says something inside.
What's it say? Can you read it even?
I love you, Henley.
Yeah, I put a little special message for you only in there. No one else will probably ever see it. And you got your name on the back. Remember that?
Oh yeah, I forgot. That I wrote.
That you wrote. It's your signature. We hid Daddy's boo-boo with these black trim strips, just like we talked about.
And then the cheetah print.
Yeah, baby. Hold like a real good. Yeah.
This is what I like to do on my guitar. So I just go. Wait, can I have one of those pick thingies?
I don't have one out here, but I can give you something to use. Or we'll find one when we learn how to play it for real. Make up a song. Is this a song about tres leche cake? Okay, what are we gonna call it? 1, 2, 3.
When I started this kit, I thought it might be something that Henley and I would build together, but pretty quickly I realized it was a little too time consuming and a little too complex to force that. So instead, this became my way of building something for her and not with her, but with her ideas still guiding the whole project. From design choices to final details, I wanted this ukulele to feel like hers. Not just a kit I put together, but something personal that matched her style and her personality. So, seeing where she started years ago with a toy guitar,
I'll dance.
Wow, that's a good job, babe.
To use. Or we'll find one when we learn how to play it for real.
And now handing her something custom made just for her. It makes this project feel like a lot more than a build. It's a reminder that sometimes the best projects are the ones that become part of a memory. And for me, that is what made this one worth it. I hope you enjoyed. I hope to see you soon. Hope you come back for more. Thanks for watching.